Closing parenthesis colon. What would you do if the only choice you had was between sleeping alone in the cold or trusting a stranger with your life? One woman made that choice, and what happened that night would change everything. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe, because stories like this don't just entertain, they stay with you. The wind howled across the empty stretch of land, dragging dust along the cracked road like whispers of forgotten stories, and Clara pulled her thin coat tighter around herself as the last bus she could have taken disappeared hours ago, leaving her stranded miles from anywhere she could call safe, her shoes worn down, her hands trembling not just from the cold but from the long chain of decisions that had led her here, decisions she replayed over and over in her mind like a punishment she couldn't escape, until the distant sound of hooves broke through the silence, steady and deliberate, and when she looked up, she saw him, tall in the saddle, framed by the fading gold of the setting sun, a cowboy straight out of a world she thought only existed in stories, his silhouette unmoving for a moment as if he were deciding whether she was real or just another mirage in the desert heat, and then he approached slowly, cautious but not afraid, his eyes sharp yet unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. He didn't speak at first, just studied her the way someone studies a problem they're not sure they want to solve, and Clara felt that familiar tightening in her chest, the instinct to run, to disappear, to trust no one, but she had nowhere left to go, no strength left to fight the world on her own, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low and steady, carrying none of the suspicion she expected, only a quiet certainty. "You're a long way from anywhere," he said, and she swallowed hard before nodding, unable to find the right words, because how do you explain running from everything you've ever known without sounding like you're the problem? He glanced at the sky, already darkening, then back at her, and there was a moment, just a moment, where something softened in his expression, like he recognized something in her that she didn't even understand herself, and then he said the words that would stay with her forever, words that sounded simple but carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken possibilities. "You can sleep on the porch, or in my bed," and Clara froze, her mind racing, because she knew what most men meant when they said something like that, knew the unspoken expectations, the quiet bargains hidden beneath kindness, and yet there was something different in the way he said it, no pressure, no demand, just an offer, clear, direct, and entirely up to her. The ranch wasn't far, just a few minutes down a narrow dirt path lined with fences that looked older than time itself, and as they approached, Clara noticed how quiet everything was, no voices, no signs of life beyond the distant lowing of cattle and the creak of wood in the wind. And when he helped her down from the horse, his touch was brief, careful, like he was afraid she might break, and he didn't ask questions, didn't pry into her past the way others had, just gestured toward the house and said, "There's water inside, and food if you're hungry," before stepping back, giving her space, giving her the choice again without saying it out loud. Inside, the house was simple but warm, the kind of place built for survival rather than comfort, yet there was a quiet dignity in its simplicity. And Clara found herself noticing small details, the neatly folded blanket on the couch, the worn boots by the door, the faint smell of coffee lingering in the air, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt something she barely recognized anymore, the possibility of safety. She stood there for a long time, staring at the hallway that led deeper into the house, knowing that one door would lead to the porch outside, cold and exposed but hers alone, and another would lead to the room he had offered, a place of warmth but also uncertainty, and her mind battled itself, every instinct screaming at her to stay guarded, to trust no one, because trust had cost her everything before, but exhaustion has a way of breaking down even the strongest walls, and when she finally moved, it wasn't toward the door she expected. The bed was simple, clean, untouched, and he wasn't there. For a moment, she didn't understand, her heart racing as she looked around, expecting him to appear, to reveal the hidden condition behind his offer, but instead she found a folded note on the nightstand, written in rough, uneven handwriting that somehow made it feel more honest, more real. "I'll be in the barn. Lock the door." And just like that, everything shifted. Because this wasn't a trap. It wasn't a bargain. It was a choice, and he had already made his. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the moment crashing over her, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe without fear clawing at her throat, allowed herself to believe, just a little, that maybe not everyone in the world was looking to take something from her, that maybe kindness could exist without a price, and as the night deepened outside, she lay down, her body sinking into the mattress, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but her mind still racing with questions about the man in the barn, the stranger who had offered her safety without asking for anything in return. But the night wasn't over yet. Because somewhere beyond the fences, beyond the quiet fields, there were people who hadn't stopped looking for her. And they were closer than she thought. The sound came just past midnight, a distant rumble that didn't belong to the natural rhythm of the ranch, and Clara's eyes snapped open, her body instantly alert, every nerve on edge, because she knew that sound, knew it too well, and her heart began to pound as headlights cut through the darkness outside, sweeping across the walls like searching eyes, and in that moment, every fragile sense of safety she had built shattered, replaced by the cold, hard reality she had tried to outrun. They had found her. She moved quickly, silently, slipping off the bed and toward the window, her breath shallow as she peeked through the curtain, and there they were, 2 trucks, engines idling, doors opening, figures stepping out with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing they've already won, and Clara's mind raced, calculating, panicking, because there was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, and the only person who could help her was the man she barely knew, the man who was now somewhere out in the barn, completely unaware of the danger heading straight for them. But before she could move, before she could even decide what to do, she saw something that stopped her cold. He was already there, standing between the house and the approaching men, his silhouette calm and unmoving, like he had been expecting this all along. And suddenly, Clara realized something she hadn't considered before. Maybe she wasn't the only one with a past. The confrontation was quiet at first, voices too low to make out, but the tension was unmistakable, thick in the air like a storm waiting to break, and Clara pressed herself against the wall, listening, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure they could hear it, until one of the men stepped forward, his voice sharp and impatient, demanding something, demanding her, and the cowboy didn't move, didn't raise his voice, just stood there, unshaken, like a wall they couldn't break through. And then, everything exploded. The sound of a gunshot shattered the silence, followed by chaos, shouting, movement, the unmistakable clash of a fight that had been building long before this night. And Clara's instincts took over, pushing her toward the door, because she couldn't just hide, couldn't let someone else risk everything for her, and when she stepped outside, the scene was nothing like she expected. He wasn't losing. He wasn't even struggling. He moved with a precision that spoke of experience, of battles fought and survived, and in that moment, Clara saw him not as a simple cowboy, but as something far more dangerous, far more capable, and as the men began to retreat, their confidence shattered, she understood the truth. He hadn't just offered her a place to sleep. He had chosen to protect her. And when the last truck disappeared into the night, leaving only silence behind, Clara stood there, trembling, her world forever changed, because she knew now that safety wasn't just about where you were, it was about who was willing to stand beside you when everything fell apart. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and pink, Clara found him sitting on the porch, his hat resting beside him, his expression tired but steady, and when she approached, unsure of what to say, he looked up at her with that same quiet certainty, like nothing had changed, like the night hadn't rewritten everything between them. "You okay?" he asked, and for the first time in a long, long time, Clara realized that she was. Not because the world had suddenly become safe, but because she had finally found someone who made it feel that way. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything.